This is probably going to be the best patch of the year. 07 Star Citizens. It's been a little over a month since my last YouTube video, and I had actually originally planned to take a week off this past week. You know, hasn't really been much going on in Star Citizen. I've been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3. I'm getting ready for Starfield to release on Friday. And then CIG decided to make 320 PTU pop up on Friday morning. So I've been playing that. Now, the 320 patch, when we first heard what was actually coming in it, was obviously very Arena Commander focused, and a lot of players weren't really happy. They were expecting a bit more of a PU feature content style patch, as we've pretty much had every patch of the last like 4 years. I personally was really excited for it. I really like Arena Commander. I think it did need a bit of a facelift, as well as some of the announcements that they had for Arena Commander obviously had implications for the persistent universe, namely the experimental modes with master modes. Well, after about 20 hours so far of playing the PTU, feel like I can have a fairly good understanding of how the patch is going, and this is probably going to be the best patch of the year. Before we get going into everything that's in the patch, if you like the content, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified every single time I release a video. I'm going to be making a mining video in a couple of days because, as you'll find out in a second, that's also changed a fair bit in 320. And as a quick aside, Salty Mike's podcast, Answer the Call, has changed and now has a permanent co-host. This loser. So if you want to see two guys complain about the game and complain about each other's opinions and praise the game as well, then make sure you go over to Mike's channel, subscribe, and watch those videos because I get some of the ad revenue. All right, let's get down to the nitty gritty. So a lot of people who watch my channel watch me because of the mining content I've released in the past. So we're actually going to start with that. Mining changes were kind of hidden within the patch notes other than like some small things. 319 previously brought out a ton of things for mining. A lot of you will know that. It was a complete rebalance of gadgets, modules, all that sort of stuff. I did release a video about all of those things that changed, and if you want to check that out, here is the link. However, it may no longer be up to date with 320. They have completely changed two very major things in mining. One is how instability is calculated, and the second is distribution. So previously in 319, there was a way to kind of cheese mining where you could make it so that when you went to fracture a rock, it was entirely green the whole way through. That's no longer possible. Apparently, you can only get it up to a maximum of 50% now. That, combined with how instability has been recalculated and redone, means that if you have a more powerful laser, you're going to have a much harder time cracking smaller rocks. I think in general, this is a fantastic change. I don't think I've had enough time to actually play the PU enough to see exactly how all of that stuff works. So that's why I mentioned I'm going to have a video coming up in a couple of days going over these changes in a lot more detail. But needless to say, I am a fan of these changes so far. The big thing in 320 that we've been waiting for, I think since like 2016, is the Hull C. Now, lore-wise, this ship is supposed to be the most common ship in the verse, bar none. It is your generic space trucking long flight hauler ship. So much so that it's not even really supposed to land on planets and moons with any load at all. Well, 320 has finally brought it in, and it's brought with it a couple of interesting things. First off, the ship itself, other than some phallic details, looks amazing. I think they've done a fantastic job with the interior specifically. The way that the ship flows feels very utilitarian. You know, this is a ship that realistically should be designed to minimize the amount of space that there is there so that you can maximize your profits with the maximum amount of cargo that you can get. They've installed obviously several engineering locations, things for fire extinguishers, engineering panels, things that we're probably going to see some more of stuff in the Citizen Con that's coming up in October. The cockpit is very reminiscent of the Starfarer, and that is more or less what I would expect. So even though you don't get much visibility out of the cockpit, it suits Misk for it to be like that. And the animation of unloading or loading the splines, reconfiguring the ship itself in order for you to start loading up cargo is just fantastic. Now, apparently, this was actually like a big design wall that they hit. I don't know if it was because of tech limitations or design itself. I'd have to rewatch a couple of old videos, but whatever it was, they've done a fantastic job there. It looks amazing. Now, the Hull C itself has some other things with it, obviously. So we now have a ship with over 4,000 SCU of cargo, where previously the most amount of cargo we could get was just shy of 700 SCU. So you may be thinking, is that not going to ruin the economy? To which my answer is, there isn't really an economy in Star Citizen at the moment. Anyway, however, it does look like they have added a lot of supply to a lot of the major orbiting stations. The quality of those materials doesn't seem to be worth as much, obviously, as some of the ground locations. But when you are transporting up to 4,000 SCU of those goods, then you can still make quite a little bit of money. One thing I do want to point out that is quite relevant with the Hull C is if you're using it on salvaged cargo, it kind of doesn't matter necessarily. So if you need to go to a location where there is, you know, thousands of SCU of salvage cargo that you need to grab, you can still grab that with your Hull C. You're just then likely going to want to, you know, put it onto a Hercules and do a couple of trips that way to sell it to ground stations. This is a little bit of, you know, an annoying leg that you have to do, but it's also completely within the idea of the Hull C itself. Speaking of cargo, two new things have happened with the Hull C. One of them is we now have more than just one SCU cargo containers. We have 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 24, and 32 SCU cargo containers, all of which at the moment can be moved with your handheld tractor beam. So this allows obviously for a much easier transportation of goods anytime you're moving them from ship to ship, or as I sort of just mentioned, salvaging cargo. And in the future, when you do have to load and unload cargo, this is once again obviously going to make things significantly easier. It's stuff that we knew was coming in, but it's also just nice to see them there. A good quality of life thing that has happened in the patch in addition to this is when you do tractor beam these cargo containers now, it will tell you what you are holding in your tractor beam, whereas in 3.19 it just said placeholder. So that is fixed now. That is a thing. So that makes a lot of that stuff a lot easier for pirates and salvagers alike. The second thing that has come from the Hull C because of this is the way that we load and unload it. Now, so far, I have not been able to get this to work in the PTU. There's a lot of bugs with the Hull C because it's just so many brand new moving parts that are working with everything. However, everything I've seen from people that have gotten it to work, it seems somewhat reasonable. Essentially what you have to do is you dock at a station, you store your ship, you go to the admin center to buy whatever cargo it is that you want to make some money off of. You then go back, call your ship again, and then when you get in there, there is now a new contact in your comms that you can call. And they will be, you know, something like Everest Harbor Cargo. They'll then direct you to go to a certain location where you'll just float with your splines unlocked, and the cargo will start to appear on the ship. Now, you do have to make sure that there's no one else in the area and that you are completely stationary in order for it to work. And that's where a lot of the bugs have come around, unfortunately. A full load of the Hull C, about 4,000 SCU of cargo, apparently takes about 5 minutes. This is a pretty reasonable amount of time, but honestly. The only thing that's sort of interesting about it that we will have to see moving forward how it works is if you're a pirate that's trying to find out who is worth stealing from, 5 minutes is a long time. And you are obviously completely visible during that entire time. So you can work out what they're trying to offload, how long it's going to take for them to actually, you know, start moving away and you know, to wherever their end destination is. This whole loop was said to be a temporary solution, but I don't know just how temporary it is. I feel like we're going to have this in the game for probably 4 to 5 years until we get not just freight elevators, but everything else in between. It's a really big undertaking. So that's the main things with the Hull C. For the moment, that is the only ship in the 520.0 patch. However, it's possible there may be some more, so keep on the lookout because they'll probably be added to the roadmap roundup, or they'll be in an ISC or something like that. One ship tends to be a little bit less than we would see in a major patch, so I'm expecting a surprise ship somewhere in there. Moving slightly to the side is the new Salvage Missions. So we finally got salvaging in 3.18, we got some salvaging missions in 3.19, and we have some new ones in 3.20 that are quite cool. Essentially, these are illegal missions, and I'm only saying they're illegal missions because they only really are considered a crime if you take too long. If you check your personal tab, you'll be able to find these missions where the criminal organizations are saying, hey, we have a ship that's about to get salvaged, and it's got our paint job on the side of it. Not exactly where we want to be at the moment. Can you go scrape it for us? We'll give you a bunch of money and you can keep all the RMC and any cargo you find within those ships. Hull stripping itself right now in 3.20 actually feels significantly slower. However, you get an hour to do these missions. And as an example, one of the missions might be for you to scrape a constellation, but you have an hour to do that. And they will pay you 80,000 UEC, and then you keep all the RMC that you get, or if you want to like grab the weapons, salvage, all that sort of stuff. It's really good money. Same with if you want to, like the larger missions, I believe pay like 150,000 for you to scrape like a hammerhead or a caterpillar, which is just insanely good money. If this stays this way in 3.20 when it goes to live, there's gonna be a really, really efficient way to make money, especially if the new cargo in some of these ships stays the same. I went to go do In Wake of Disaster, a mission that came out in 3.19 that a lot of you will be familiar with. It was essentially designed to be the PvP salvage mission. In these ships that are there, they're supposed to have some cargo. And previously in 3.19, whether the server liked you or not, they would have cargo or not. But if they did, it'd be pretty decent. You'd find a couple of boxes of maize, maybe some weevil eggs, which are worth like 110,000 UEC each, and you'd be pretty happy with the amount of salvage that you would get there. We found one where the whole location had over 30 million UEC worth of cargo. There is no way that will make it to live. Essentially what's happened is you can now still get all of these boxes, though they appear to be happening more frequently. Except instead of being 1 SCU boxes, they can be any of those new denominations. So we found multiple 32 SCU crates of weevil eggs, quantanium, maize, any of these really high level commodities. It was insanely good money. And this is also translated to any of the regular salvage missions where cargo appears. It is heavily unlikely that this is going to stay the same. However, I would expect the fact that cargo is appearing in them more frequently to be relevant. So when 3.20 gets to live, and you know, as we continue along through the PTU patches, that'd be something that I would recommend you look out for. The last major thing in 3.20 for the persistent universe is the wheeled vehicle handling improvements. Essentially, they've completely redone how a lot of ground vehicles work, and I've had a lot of time to test a lot of them. Some of them feel a lot better, like the Ursa Rover no longer feels like a balloon. It does feel like it has the weight appropriate to a vehicle like that. It also no longer just swings out constantly. It's got a lot better traction to the ground. Vehicles like the PTV feel a lot faster. I haven't 100% checked the speeds, but they definitely feel faster and gets me very concerned to try to run them on the BTV track on Orison again. There's a lot of changes that are happening there, and as PTU patches come along, those things are going to get rebalanced as we continue. But in general, I'm a fan of wheeled vehicles getting a rebalance at all, as they've been very hit or miss depending on whether any ground vehicles are useful for anything. Right now, the only thing that you really should be using them for is racing. There's not really missions in game that make them worth it for the most part, so the community races tend to be where these see the most use. So that's a thing that we're going to have to watch as we go forward. You know, we've got the Daymar Rally coming up next year. That's probably where we're going to see the biggest impact of these vehicles. Now, moving away from the persistent universe into the largest part of the entire 3.20 build is, of course, the Arena Commander updates. These, once again, like I said, are updates that I was incredibly excited for, but there is so many of them. Firstly, to start off with, they have completely removed Star Marine and just combined it with Arena Commander. So it's just the one system. Arena Commander Star Marine is just called Arena Commander now. We have a new lobby system and a new UI for the lobby as well. So it's a lot more appealing. I do think the images are a little bit too large. Like, I feel like I'm almost looking at a mobile game sometimes when I'm looking at the lobby, but in general, significantly better than what we have in live at the moment. We have been told that there is a spectator mode coming, and there is also a fully private lobby system coming with probably a 320.x, but for now, this is what Arena Commander looks like. And you will notice there are a lot of new game modes. Let's start with the game mode that I definitely have spent the most time playing in the last 2 days, and that's Gun Rush. Now, a lot of you are going to know this type of mode from Valorant, GoldenEye, Counter-Strike. Pretty much any FPS game that's come out in the last 30 years has had a mode like Gun Rush, where every time you get a kill, your gun upgrades. And then you keep going until you get to the last weapon, get a kill with that weapon, and you win. This mode suits Star Citizen so well, and I really commend them for all of the weapon choices that they made for Gun Rush. I don't think I've ever had this much fun doing FPS combat in Star Citizen. As per usual, you know, you start off with a couple of pistols, moving up to some SMGs, LMGs, shotguns. You get a railgun at one point. You have to go through some snipers until eventually you get to the last weapon, and it's a knife with a lighter on it and like a 2x scope. Very interesting, but a ton of fun. Now, I can't 100% say how the performance of Gun Rush has been, as right now there are no Australian servers on Arena Commander. So everything I've had to do with over 270 ping. But of what I've played, it has been crazy enjoyable. And I think, honestly, is the best part about the entire 320 branch. So many people are going to be playing Gun Rush. Moving away from Gun Rush to another really, really important update is all of these experimental modes, which Gun Rush is one of. So they have mentioned experimental modes are going to be a thing that gets updated fairly recently, probably within, you know, a couple of patches or so, where we're testing out completely brand new things. And of that, the most important is master modes. If you watched CitizenCon last year, you know that the flight model is changing, as it needs to, probably. And they have completely done that with the Gladius. So in 2 master modes on Arena Commander, you can fly the Gladius with all of its new abilities. Before we talk about how those ships fly now, an important note is the whole point of experimental modes is the experimental part. So if you don't like the changes of these ships, then let CIG know, because this is not set in stone. There are going to be rebalances happening all across this patch. If you don't know, the way that master modes essentially works is you have like a combat mode and a navigation mode. In combat mode, you know, you can use your guns and your maneuverability is a little bit better. When you get into navigation mode, your maximum speed goes way up, but it takes a fair amount of time to switch between the two. So the idea is that if you are in combat, you're going to be doing all of that in your combat mode. And then if you need to get out of dodge, you'll activate your navigation mode. You'll have to wait a little bit, which means you could still be getting shot at that time, and then you can leave. But it's a little bit more complex than that, because they've also changed the way that ships move as well. So they said that tricording is no longer possible. They changed how gimbals work. They have changed how boost works. So it'll still increase your acceleration, but now boost can take you past your maximum speed, but only to a certain point. And then once you reach that point and you're out of boost, you'll fall back down. The entire system is very malleable, and there's a lot of different directions they can go. The best opinions for master modes come, in my opinion, from the racing community and the PvP community, because for me, it just feels different, but not worse or better. And the PvP community, the racing community, everyone seems a little bit split. Some people are right now really big fans of the changes with some minor tweaks. Some people want the entire thing completely scrapped and redone. It's interesting to see. It's still obviously extremely early days, but I think the important thing to remember is that it is the experimental mode. These things probably will change. As part of the master mode change, we also have the Endless Vandal Swarm mode now, which is essentially Vandal Swarm, but they just keep spawning over and over and over and over again. Of what I played of it, so far it's pretty interesting. I just need to play it not in the Gladius in master modes to get a real understanding for it. So that's one that I'm going to have to play later. Something else pretty major that happened to Arena Commander is for the racing community, which is new maps as well as atmospheric racing in Arena Commander now. Being able to fly in atmosphere in Arena Commander has actually been amazing. In my opinion, the best flying racing and the most satisfying flying racing is in atmosphere, which is why I was really happy when we had a bunch of these racing tracks made by the community in the PU in atmosphere. Well, now we can practice those very same tracks in Arena Commander, as well as they have made all of the tracks, you know, the Deford Link, the Halloran Circuit, all those are also now in atmosphere. Those race tracks have also had a bit of a facelift, so if you haven't raced in them for a while, definitely worth checking out. That is in addition as well to actually being able to now be in an actual race and actually have 4 people on the circuit. That's quite nice as well, but you're mostly going to see that, you know, in your org made events and stuff. But that is a huge deal, in my opinion. The last massive thing, once again, for the Arena Commander update is the introduction of 2 other experimental modes with the Nova Tonk. The Tonk very well may be my favorite vehicle in Star Citizen, and we can finally use it in Arena Commander, which means if I want to set up a tank battle, it does not take me an hour and a half to do so. There are a lot of bugs going on with this mode. Everyone is reporting major crashes whenever they shoot or even see an explosion. But when the game modes work, the team deathmatch version of the tank battles is so unbelievably fun. And it's something that we just have been completely missing from Star Citizen. We've had these vehicles, the only ways to use them has been community events. Now we have a proper way to use them. It also does make me long for Theaters of War, but that's, you know, for another day. Overall, 320 is just such a better patch than I think a lot of us were expecting. The Arena Commander updates are not just much needed, but a ton of fun. The Hull C has pretty much met the expectations of a lot of people, even for a ship that has been pushed back since 2016. This year has had a lot of updates that have dealt with the back end of the game or rebalancing, but none of the updates so far this year have felt fun until now. I do think that this is going to be the best patch of the year. I don't think we're going to see a 4th major patch this year, but whatever does arrive in a 320.x patch before the end of the year, I think is just going to bolster this sort of stuff up. We don't have many updates to locations. We're still waiting on some ships. But overall, 320 is a 10 out of 10 Star Citizen patch for me. Now, that's it for this video. Like I said, I'm going to be posting a video up about more specifics on the mining changes as I go through them over the next couple of days. Also, Starfield comes out on Friday, and I'm going to be playing that a ton on Twitch. So if you want to come watch me, twitch.tv/Croncierge, and hang out, play Starfield, tell me how your Starfield runs are going. Also, if you want to see Starfield content on YouTube, let me know. I've only really ever made Star Citizen content, so I don't really know what to do. I mean, that's why I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 for the last month and not making YouTube videos about it. So let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. And lastly, we actually helped a YouTuber named Muselk make a Star Citizen video super recently about Jumptown. If you want to check that out, the description is below. It's a really, really fun video. Muselk is an absolutely fantastic dude, and it was a lot of fun making, so make sure you check that one out as well. That is it for me. I am going to go back into Star Citizen and do a crap ton of mining. See you guys in the verse.